Well, good morning or afternoon or evening, depending on where you are. Some of you I have seen in chat are many of you are in the United States. I know we have some folks from other countries. Welcome. This is Recipe for Success, and our topic for today is curriculum mapping, the importance of understanding curriculum mapping and developing learning programs. And we are excited to have this conversation, and we're very, very grateful for your time. Just a little introduction to Ingenuiti, who we are and what we do. We provide three services. The first is custom learning design. So we do learning design and development, everything from instructor-led training to virtual to e-learning to augmented reality to virtual reality, and yeah, pretty much everything in between. And so we have a lot of interesting projects that we get to work on. The second part of Ingenuiti is translation and localization. And so this was our primary business for a number of years. We have translated more than 1 billion words, and we have translated more than 10,000 learning modules, which is, those are big numbers. I don't know who's tracking them exactly, but I mean, after you get to 1 billion, right, you become McDonald's. And then the third service that we provide is staff augmentation, which is our opportunity to provide learning and training professionals for companies for a short period of time. So it could be somebody needs somebody for a month or 3 months or 6 months, sometimes year contracts, but they are that team is instructional designers. It can be graphic designers, video editors, project managers, pretty much anything that people need inside of learning, training, and development. We've placed, I think, more than 1,500 people, which is really fun to do. Just a couple of housekeeping things for those of you who have joined in the last minute or two. When you have a question, please put it in the Q&A box, which you should see. And we're not going to save up all the questions to the end. As you have a question, ask it. If it's something we don't know, we'll ignore it. But chances are we might, Miriam will know it.
Not
And Rebecca,
necessarily.
yeah, and Rebecca, if Miriam doesn't, Rebecca does. So we'll do our best there. But put your questions in there so we can have a vibrant live discussion. Some of the people joining me today, my name is Jerry Zandstra, and I'm the Senior Director of Learning at Ingenuiti. I have been in some form of learning, training, and development for with adults for more than 30 years. And so I get to lead a wonderful team, and two of the people on the team, two of my colleagues are Rebecca and Miriam, both of whom are joining this morning. And so Rebecca, you want to give a little introduction to yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Rebecca Zwiers. I'm a senior instructional designer at Ingenuiti, and same with Jerry. Been in the business about 30 years now. We don't like to admit that because we don't like to admit how old we are, but really enjoy both the topic we're going to discuss today and the theme that we're going to work around as well today. So
Great.
joy is, yeah, to see the learning and learn along with you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Miriam.
Hi, so I'm Miriam Taylor. I'm the Client Success Manager here at Ingenuiti, and I've also spent about 30 years in the learning and development industry, everything from instructional design and development to leading teams. And now it's my privilege to work kind of between with our clients to help craft the right learning solution, and then also with the learning team to make sure things go smoothly. And then it's also my privilege to work with Jerry often on these webinars. We do podcasts together and things like that. So I'm looking forward to today as well.
Was that a shameless plug for our
It was
podcast, Miriam? Yeah, measurably better
unintentional but
is the
shameless.
yeah, measurably better is the podcast. And so if you're interested in that, please take a look. Well, let's dive right in. So the first question is sort of a framing question. It's the big question: what is a curriculum map, and why do we need one? And maybe a second or third question, I suppose. When do we not need one? So let's start with what is a curriculum map?
Sure. Well, we have the notes on the screen. Obviously, we don't need to necessarily repeat those, but it can mean different things to different people. So I think we do want to clarify a little bit. So a curriculum map really is a scope and sequence for a program. So you typically don't need one if you're looking to develop one module or even perhaps just a series of modules, but it's related to one topic. So the point of a curriculum map is A, it's flexible, but B, it creates some visual alignment, it creates order, it helps you identify gaps or redundancies if you're looking at an entire program of content. Similar, for example, if you are perhaps merging in a company, or perhaps you're bringing, like, trying to update some older programs. So that's in a nutshell what it is. Rebecca, did you have anything else that I think, just to help clarify?
No, it really is when we need to get alignment more than anything else as well. So yeah, mergers or large programs. Sometimes it's even smaller programs if there's not alignment within the company.
And
So
go ahead,
Miriam. No, go ahead.
Well, our whole theme here, and I know you'll introduce it, is the concept of a dinner party. So the concept would be, or to make our analogy kind of pull it through, we're not just talking about cooking one dish, right? That would be the analogy to perhaps developing a module or series of modules on one topic. We're talking about an entire program. So similar to planning a dinner party. So it's everything from the food to the arrangements to the invitations to the timing, entertainment, all of that. And that'll be our theme as we flow through.
Yeah, I was going to ask, why are we looking at a picture of people eating? And you just answered that. So that's our theme. And Andrea has a good question, and I think this is a great time to ask it. Is a curriculum map different from a storyboard, or is it just a different name for that type of deliverable? I think that's a great question.
It is a good question, and it is the before the storyboard. It is getting to that, that diving into mapping out the storyboard.
Right.
And could be multiple storyboards, right?
Correct.
Where I mean, you might not, to what Miriam said, you might not use it for a single module, but when you've got 10 modules and you're going to have multiple storyboards, how do they fit? Where do they go? Who are we'll get into the details of it, Andrea, but that's a great question.
Yeah, it comes before the storyboard, but it gives you a map, so you know all the courses you need to create, which then leads you to all the storyboards.
Yeah. Good. Thank you for that question. Let's look at the purpose. What's the purpose of a curriculum map, and how do you plan a well-run session? And that's an important word, session, because this is an actual event. Right? This isn't something you sit at your desk and create your own curriculum map. Most of the time, I would think there are other people involved. And so we have to think of this as a group activity. So what purpose are we looking at?
Yeah, a huge part of curriculum mapping is consensus building. And so before we get to the details of the map itself, if you don't have the right people around the table, then it's going to be, to your point, Jerry, you don't just create it in a vacuum. So typically we host, whether it's live or in person, it live virtually, or it's actually in person, it doesn't matter, but we have at least 2 instructional designers. We like to do things visually. We typically have materials we send to the client ahead of time so they gather their information. I know, Rebecca, why don't you speak to that? Because I know that's a big part of what you do.
Yeah, there's pre-work, just like any good learning session. You would have some pre-work or some knowledge base. We send some information out, some questions out, so that the instructional designers and the team that's going to be working with you can understand going in how we're going to set it up. You know, just like when you're preparing for a dinner party, you take into account who's coming, so you can begin to prepare for them. And that's, you know, like if we're going to have to answer Sandeep's question, if we're going to have global learners,
Yeah.
so when do we need to do it? Do we need translation? All those little nuances so that we can get set.
Yeah, Sandeep's question is a great one because it asks a question that makes curriculum mapping harder, which is, will we be covering how to approach curriculum mapping for a global audience? So Sandeep, most of the learning that we create is for global companies. So there are multicultural issues, there are multilingual issues, and that's a great spot to begin with the curriculum mapping, especially if you have multiple modules. And it could be that not all modules apply equally to all regions of the world. And so you're thinking through who the learners are going to be and some other issues, but how that fits together for one country might not be how it fits together for another. And Sandeep, exactly right. As Sandeep says, especially when you have local laws and processes. So, you know, there are times that we create learning that is based on regulation, right? And regulations vary. I mean, think of cybersecurity and OSHA laws versus some other version of compliance laws. Yeah, there are times when you need to break those things out, and how those pieces all fit together is definitely a curriculum and mapping exercise. So yeah, go ahead, Miriam.
No, that's the argument for having a curriculum map as opposed to just plunging in and creating, you know, even if it is a specific topic, plunging in and just starting to create and then realizing too late that they vary, or there's at least, you know, enough variance that we really need to map that out and figure out where the gaps are.
And by the time you find that out, if you don't do this, it's too late, and you've damaged your learning culture, because learners are immediately realizing that you didn't take the time to apply what needs to be known specifically to them. Well, let's jump into the the first thing to avoid. How do you avoid a disaster? What is a disaster in curriculum mapping, and how do we steer clear of them?
Yeah, so one thing I think that Rebecca and I have learned early on, and it's not even really on the screen, is, but we tend to keep these sessions to maybe an hour and a half to 2 at the most, because you are really, I mean, we have a lot of instructional designers on the call. So you're really doing a lot of higher order thinking here. And as instructional designers, we're fairly used to looking at content, pulling it apart, rebuilding it differently, but you're asking your stakeholders to do the same thing. And we started to get a lot of blank looks and a lot of just, I mean, everyone just checks out. So I'd say that's a small, very like practical thing. But before we talk about the other ones, you may need to have 3 sessions or 2, but keep them, there's, you know, to an hour and a half to 2 at the most, just because of that reason alone.
There's fatigue, curriculum map fatigue.
Yes.
Yeah, because it is, and sometimes there's disagreements, right?
Oh, for sure.
You don't walk into the room and everybody, it turns out, is aligned exactly on how this thing ought to go.
Yeah.
Well, let's get to the actual curriculum map, and so this is the skeleton, basically. So when we do a curriculum map, these are the key points and key components that we look at to make sure that at the end we have a curriculum map. So Rebecca and Miriam, you want to just talk us through these? We'll dive into each one of them. So we'll look at what each one, what are some of the key questions for each one? What do they look like? But just talk us through this framework.
Sure. So similar to, again, if you're planning a party and you kind of have your list of what's the food, who are the guests, where's the venue, this is a similar thing here. We wanted this webinar in particular to be very practical. And so this is really a tool, and we're going to talk through each one of these. You will provide some examples. And when we're done, we actually have one of these that eventually you'll be able to access to kind of manipulate on your own. But So whether you work, if you're on this call, you're working with internal business units within your company, or whether you're working with external clients, regardless, this tool will work. But it's high level, and also you'll see the far right column. We will dive in at the end towards topics and objectives, and that's where we're really, that begins the real work of the curriculum map. But if you don't really take some time to discuss the other columns, then you're going to find yourself in trouble.
And all throughout it is when you are going to be trying to discover, working with your stakeholders, their priorities, the benefits of doing this, and also the risks associated with different areas. So that's like the in the back of your mind throughout it all, what we're trying to discover.
So will there'll be priorities and benefits and risk considerations for each one of these buckets?
Maybe not always. It's not really designed, and that's really you're filling in the columns. But on the left side, that's kind of why we have the dotted lines, is that those are things, like Rebecca said, you're really working hard to uncover. And sometimes those are even questions you can ask if you don't have agreement. You can say, well, what would be the benefit of doing this now? What's the risk if we don't? And so then it's a good way to sort of help get at consensus. And
consensus, again, I think most people walk, and we've seen this before, where everybody that walked in the room thought everybody agreed with them. And you found out that there's 5 people in the room, and they all have a very different understanding of what is a priority and what is not, or what the potential benefits are, what the potential risks are. And that project almost certainly is going to go sideways. Because as you're developing, as you're building, as your stakeholders are looking at things, they'll find this isn't at all what I thought we were doing. This isn't my priority at all. So sussing that stuff out is a pretty good challenge. Well, let's look at the first category. So Rebecca, you want to talk us through that one?
Sure. Is it really important to know what the whole organization, because everybody might have their own, sales might have a priority where it does not line up with the learning team's goal, but you want to look at the whole organizational's goals. What is their priorities? Where are they working to put their focus on? And then then we need to align those to the organizational goals. Just like when you're having a dinner party, why are you having it? There's a reason you're doing it.
I should tell you, our youngest son is getting married at our home, actually, in June. And so we are thinking through all of these things, Rebecca, on a pretty bigger scale than the number of people we've ever had over to our house before, right? Guest list and food and, bathrooms, all the stuff that goes into this. So and it's in early June. So my home is utter chaos right now. Before Miriam, you addressed this, Linda, you asked if you're going to get these slides. Yeah, you will, as well as a tool. And Sandeep, you asked a really good question. Will we identify stakeholders prior to this session? And how do you ensure that you don't miss anyone? That is a really tough issue. And Miriam and I and Rebecca often refer to the secret stakeholder. The secret stakeholder is somebody who might have budgetary control or overall control of the project. And that person isn't mentioned. And so you get all done with the project, and some secret stakeholder comes and helicopters in and blows the entire thing up, which is insane, right? And everybody goes, well, wait a minute. So yeah, Miriam, talk us through that.
Well, I would say there's 2 places that you can capture this. So by sending out pre-work, which we have a questionnaire that's asking them to do, and we're not really discussing the questionnaire here per se, but it's related to their topics and who needs to be involved, and ask some pointed questions. And really the point is to force them to gather the materials and really spend some time thinking ahead, not just show up. But the second time then is, part of the reasons that we talk about 1.5 to 2 hour sessions is that if in any one of these you uncover something where people, and it often happens like, oh, we should ask this person or that person. You want to highlight that in your curriculum map, and depending, you might want to say, okay, time out. We're not going to meet again until you get this person at the table too, or you at least flag it in your curriculum map to say, before we move further, we need to find out from this person. So these questions really do in each of these columns. Obviously, there's a specific stakeholder column. But that one helps you uncover any that aren't there. But I think the questionnaire, the pre-work also helps you get at who should be at the table.
And then at the beginning of the very first curriculum mapping session, ask the question,
Yeah.
who are we missing at this table?
Yep. Yep.
And again, it might not be on the learning team. It might be a marketing
For
person.
sure.
It might be your CFO. There's lots of different people. Robin, you had asked about slides. Yes, we will be sending you the slides. We'll be emailing you the slides tomorrow. So, or even maybe later today, but in the next 24 hours, you'll get them. So at the bottom of this slide, you will see a quote. And the quote is, to know how to eat well, one must first know how to wait. I hate that quote. I don't like waiting. I'd like my food immediately.
Yeah.
This is a quote of a famous chef. And so put into chat if you know who this is. I'll be shocked. I don't know the chef world particularly well, but does anyone know who said this?
And while we're waiting for a few people to drop in, this is chosen for a reason, right? Because sometimes a curriculum map feels like a waste of very precious time. But we've done it enough to realize that if you don't do it, you end up wasting a whole lot more time and money later. And so that's one of the reasons, aside from our fun theme, that we just thought this really applied.
So the guesses so far are Julia Child, Gordon Ramsay, Bobby Flay, Gordon Ramsay.
I think Ramsay again.
Yeah, Ramsay. I hate to tell you, okay. Whoa. Marco P. Okay, Miriam, you cheated. Marion searched for it. Marion, if you had come up with it right away, maybe not. But so this is a chef I knew nothing about. 1995, he was the very first British chef to win 3 Michelin stars, and he actually trained Gordon Ramsay. He's a very famous guy. He's dubbed the first celebrity chef, which is sort of interesting because I think of Julia Child, but yeah,
so did those that guest Gordon Ramsay get like half credit, seeing how he trained Ramsay?
I think he should.
Sure.
I think you should get some props for that. And then if any of you are fans of the show Hell's Kitchen, he was the host all the way back in 2007. So I think he was the original host, but nicely done, Marion. So we're going to give you full credit for that one. All right, well, let's look at the at the business outcome. So there are organizational goals, which are the big overarching sort of thing you find in a quarterly report, right? Things that are tied to talk us through why it's important and what we mean by business outcomes.
Yeah, business outcomes are much more specific, right? Like we have the measurements, the KPIs. You think about throwing a dinner party, you're making that food and you're not using a recipe. And I do it to laugh. So Rebecca is our resident chef. She's amazing. She doesn't need a recipe. She's just throwing things in the pot and it's turning out great. I cannot do that. It's a disaster. We find ourselves getting pizza. So business outcomes would be, either you need the experience or you follow the recipe. So knowing what those direct goals are, and some of this is self-preservation, right? As you're working on this curriculum map, you need to be able to demonstrate to your C-suite that this specific program, first of all, the time take to make the curriculum map, but then the outcome, right? The map of the programs, which can also sometimes it leads you into priorities, like we're going to do this program this year, this program the next year, because they directly support this business outcome. Yeah. We're trying to improve this KPI. That makes a huge difference, and it usually helps support the learning team's budget at the end of the day.
It does, and it's hard. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Rebecca. Go ahead.
Oh, thanks. It's amazing how many times when we're doing this that the learning team has like a pet project or something they really want to do, and then you discover that it doesn't align to any of the business outcomes, and then it's a realignment of okay, here's what we need to do instead.
Would both of you say this is one of the more difficult steps?
I would say if you get in the habit of doing it, it's not hard, because those KPIs, those other kind of measurements, they're out there. But I think so it's hard in that we often don't think of it. To Rebecca's point, we have these pet projects, or even sometimes there are crises that come along, from other business units, and they have to be done, and they don't like to hear no if I go through this curriculum mapping exercise and discover, honestly, that has to be next year's priority because it's not aligning with whatever the measurements are we need to reach this year. And that's partly why we put it in this curriculum map, right? It really forces us to do it. We can't miss it.
Yeah, I think there's coming primarily from a business background. When people can connect activities, tasks, which equal budget, right? There's always an expense. When you can connect what you're doing to the financial objectives, or can be organizational, but we're really talking business. We're really talking finance here. How do you connect? Our goal is to become 15% more efficient or reduce turnover by 20%. If you can create connective tissue back to those objectives, all of us are dealing with people that are not in the learning industry, right? And we all know this because they say, I need 6 modules next week on the following thing, right? They have no idea what goes into creating it. We might not understand their job either. but there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Rachel, I want to just take a look at your comment here. Our L&D team has an intake process. There you go. And conducts a thorough needs analysis. Wonderful. And you use the alignment for ROI Institute's alignment 5 model to determine the appropriate learning solution and success measures. This is a wonderful system that you're outlining, and unfortunately, it's not done enough. My opinion, I just don't think it's done often enough. Then curriculum map, right? There's overlap for sure, as you note here, and you avoid scope creep and a whole bunch of other things, because the curriculum map helps you create a fence, and you're not going to scope creep outside of that fence. This is the map we've aligned, we've agreed, and it's something that you come back to often. I think throughout the design and development process, you keep coming back. Is this doing what we intended it and we all agreed it was going to do? And then the stakeholder, as you noted, remaining engaged and committed to the solution before we jump into its design. If you can make that argument, and Rachel, it sounds like you're doing a really great job at that. My goodness, not to be crass, but when it comes to budget allocation, budget determination the following year, the more connective tissue, the easier job that you're going to have. And as most of you know, because you've lived through it, when there are budget cuts, right, often it's two things get cut. One is marketing and the other is learning, because you have assets that you can keep deploying for a while. And so you want to be able to make the argument that if we stop doing our learning, training, and development programs, we stop doing what we're doing, we're going to be weaker in our business objectives. These things aren't tacked on things that I guess we got to do it. This is core and essential to who we are as an organization, which ties right to the organizational objectives and straight to the business objectives. So thank you. That's a great comment, Rachel, and congratulations. That's impressive. Rebecca, anything else we need to cover?
I think we're ready for the next quote.
Well, okay, here's the next quote. This one people have to know. I measure in my palm and use my eyes to estimate amounts. A tablespoon is a full palm over hand, Oh, I said her. Okay. Full palm of dried spices. Not Helen Keller. Not
Good guess, though.
Yeah, that
not,
actually is a
not,
good
Ju-
guess.
not Julia Childs. Okay. She, I will tell you this, refers to herself as a cook and refuses to be called a chef. Has
My mom.
nice,
I love
Jason.
that.
Okay, Linda, Martha's
I
Rachel Ray. There it is. Yep. So Rachel Ray has her own show. It's a U.S. based show, and she's done lots and lots of cookbooks. And her theme is really quick and easy cooking, which is why she doesn't refer to it. I'm not a chef, I'm not trained as a chef. I won't win Michelin stars, but I'll make, you'll make some really good meals, and they'll be easy to do. Yeah, Daisy, I do too. I need to I need to widen my watching of culinary shows. This is not my sweet spot, so I'm right there with you. All right, well, let's take a look at our next topic. We've talked about stakeholders a little bit. We've talked about sort of the secret stakeholder. Miriam, define a stakeholder. How do you know when you're talking to a stakeholder?
Oh, sure. So there's a variety of categories, right? So you have someone who might be a financial stakeholder, so holder of the budget or approvals. You might have at a high level, VP or C-suite, the person who sort of owns that initiative. But then you also have subject matter experts who are stakeholders too. You have learning team stakeholders. Rebecca, who am I forgetting? I'm sure there's others.
Marketing, they often play
Oh,
a role.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah, it's amazing, and we alluded to this before, but it is amazing during curriculum mapping to me how those hidden stakeholders come to the surface. As people start talking about what the business outcomes are, what the organization, what they want to happen, somebody will keep getting mentioned, or a department will keep getting mentioned, and they're not in the room. They're that hidden stakeholder.
Yeah. And it's interesting you said marketing, because obviously the subject matter experts, right? The SMEs, no problem. That's an easy one. Certainly the project owner, and usually for most projects, there is somebody whose job it is to bring this thing to completion. There are financial considerations. There might, your CFO or financial team might be involved. Oftentimes it's the marketing group, and they come in with a unique perspective. And we have seen even recently an example of the learning team battling with the marketing team. The marketing team wants everything in their colors and exactly as as they usually set it up. And the learning team wants some liberty to do something different, or and the marketing team, I think, looks at it as an opportunity to reinforce the brand, especially if it's an internal training, right? They're looking at it as an opportunity to reinforce in team members' mind the actual brand. And sometimes, a lot of times, they are the secret stakeholder. They are the ones that come in at the end and blow the whole thing up. Rachel, let's see here. You added, I want to come back to it here. Yeah, instructors. So if it's an instructor-led course, the people who are going to be facilitators certainly will be stakeholders in what's created for them. And then the tech side, the LMS admins and learning records. How does this all get stored? That's a great add. Yeah. And then Sandeep, you're anyone who impacts or gets impacted by the initiative. That might be a little bit broad for me, because lots of people will get impacted, the learners in particular, but they might not be stakeholders. But yeah. And then, yeah, as Andrea points out, they usually have the best assets to leverage too, of the marketing team. That's true. Because oftentimes they have cool things. And it's, we have a webinar coming up in May, and we'll let you know about it, but it really is all about marketing your learning. And we've seen really good examples of the learning team going to the marketing team and saying, help us think through how to market this, or help us create some assets to market this, because they're obviously, they're thinking in or they're thinking in consumer personas, which is the language of marketing. But we'll have a webinar coming up on that. But that connection between the marketing team and the learning team very often isn't as strong as it might be. They are negatively sometimes the secret stakeholders, but they can also be wonderful assets. That's great.
And sometimes it's an opportunity to help educate them too. We talk a lot, right, about marketing is the call to action, or advertising, or you're thinking about how you see a commercial, and it's an opportunity to help them understand that that doesn't always create the best form of learning. And we don't need to go into all of that, but if I have too much action on my screen, I'm creating cognitive overload,
Right.
or I'm using the exact 3 colors that are the brand, which, we totally appreciate, but I'm already creating demotivation at that point. And so it's a good conversation. Can we add a secondary color? Can we, we do need to simplify this because it's being rolled out across mobile device. It's an opportunity to educate for sure when you're talking with them. So.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm gonna bring this all back to our dinner party.
Absolutely, go for it.
And when we are planning weddings, as Jerry is just thinking about, or I just had to do 2 in the last year.
Can you just do this for me? Can you just take over and get me out of this?
Yeah, you're gonna choose who's gonna sit at each table, right? Like, and often those who sit at the table, they're there for a reason. You're putting Aunt Bertha next to Aunt Maggie because they can talk and they have things in common. And then you're putting somebody else at a different table because they don't know those people. So it's a little bit of orchestrating who's in the room and how they're going to be able to communicate and get their points across.
Great point. Great point. David brings up a good point, kind of reinforcing the creative teams are often overlooked at this stage. Depends on your creatives, but sometimes the creative, by creative, we mean graphic designers, video editors, animators, and so on. The people that actually build the stuff. Fantastic. We've seen fantastic skills in those teams, in our own team, where you go, wow, that's really cool. And then, of course, David, you bring up too the actual end user. We're going to come back to the global thing for just a minute, because if you look around that table and you're working in a multinational, multilingual, multicultural situation, and everybody around your table is same language, same culture, same nation, chances are you're going to miss an awful lot of your end users in a global setting. And so, yeah. You want to address Rachel's comment that the program project sponsor is the primary stakeholder. You want to do that a minute, Miriam?
Yeah, I mean, to me, that is the ideal perfect world situation, right? Everything flows through them. They've already gone to the other stakeholders. They've already worked through them. Any changes that the marketing team wants or anyone else has to flow through the program sponsor, or it doesn't happen. And so to me, that makes perfect sense. It just often, we just saw this probably a month or so ago with the project sponsor, who was quite high up, just wanted to do a quick run by with her boss, who'd asked for just a quick run through, and everything came to a screeching halt, and it was all changed because they had a different view. And again, that's something that as learning teams, sometimes we have to let those departments figure out on their own, work through it. But in a perfect world, yes, the project sponsor runs all of it, and anybody that wants a change, any stakeholder, like that has to be discussed internally, and that has to be approved.
Okay, let's move on to the quote. And this one is a two-parter. So first of all, who said it? Well, let's start with who said it. If you want to become a great chef, you have to work with great chefs. And that's exactly what I did. Who said that? Everybody doing their Google search.
I think this is one that's been guessed before.
Yep, Ramsey. So it's Gordon Ramsay. David, all right, you got to it first. Then the second part is, what is the name of the person who trained Gordon Ramsay?
See if you were listening.
Yeah, you guys didn't know there'd be knowledge checks in this.
Right.
David, the answer to the first quote. Okay, or Daisy, sorry, close enough. Yep.
Yep.
Yep, there you go.
Guy
The
you
person
mentioned
guessed earlier, the guy you mentioned earlier. Yep, you're all on it. Yeah, whose name I have to look up. It's Marco Pierre White. So yeah, good. All right, well, let's move on to the next one, organizational values. So we've talked about sort of organizational goals. We've talked about the business outcomes, stakeholders. Now on to organizational values. What do we mean by that?
Yeah, I think, and we can, be a little quicker with this one, I think, but similar to a dinner party, everybody kind of comes with their own set of values and beliefs. And, we talk about holidays, we don't talk about politics, we don't talk about religion, we don't, whatever those things are. Well, the interesting thing with curriculum mapping is that it is as an opportunity to really reinforce the company's values, the organization's values, if you do it right. And so that's why we put it here. Now maybe the program you're working through, obviously it has to be in line with the organization's values, but maybe it's not such an obvious link. Or maybe you uncover, here's a value that this really ties straight to what we're doing, and we can kind of pull it in a variety of ways. We've all worked for organizations where it's just a poster on a wall and people don't know it, they don't believe it, they might be outright hostile to them, but in a good situation, it's just something, it's kind of one of those, this column really is one of those, like, let's just pause for half a second, think about this. Is there a place we can reinforce any organizational values? Or are there any that really haven't been operationalized? Here's an opportunity to think about it before we just move on.
And you're thinking in terms of creating, you're kind of describing a learning culture.
Which is our next one. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep,
right.
exactly.
You're kind of leaning into that. But again, back to connective tissue to organizational goals, connective tissue to business outcomes, connective tissue to who we are as an organization. It's a great opportunity, and oftentimes it's done subtly. It doesn't have to be overt, but you're constantly bringing people back to the value question. And that's when values become live and operational, when people are reminded and you're connecting, it's the Simon Sinek why thing. What are the whys? What are the things we hold dear as an organization? So yeah.
We get
Rebecca, things to add?
Yeah, when we get to this section of the curriculum mapping, this is where we often discover some priorities for the teams and also some benefits for the teams, because it's that belief, it's that the good feeling area as well, in which we're trying to reflect those values, we're finding those values, and then we're going to show where those priorities are.
Good.
Yeah, I think even something as simple as, so like, we create a whole lot of compliance training. But if we can connect that to the value, the company, whether it's thriving employees or whatever it might be, it might just be a few sentences at the beginning and the end, or it might be something as full blown as a video from the CEO. But we care about you as a company. We want you to be healthy. We want you to be safe. And so, now we're going to go through, here's how you do it. But it's because our value is that our employees would be thriving. That's, just a small example.
Yeah, just one really quick, practical, kind of cool thing that I'm proud of that we did recently was we took an image of the CEO of this very large multinational company, and then we took a section of a speech that he had given through AI. We photorealistically created an animation of him. We had his voice read the script, enforcing the values of the company. And then also through AI, we were able to translate that, I think, into Korean and, well, just about any. We work.
Yeah, we could do any. We just chose.
Yeah, we chose two languages, Korean and maybe French. And so there was at the very beginning the CEO, who is a very recognizable figure, speaking directly in language. Yeah, Gus, you're right. Parts of it, not all of it, but of that program. But and it was powerful. The first people that saw it were like taken aback. But it was really a value reinforcement exercise. All right, well, let's take a look. This is not a cook. It's not a chef. It's an American comedian, and you have to be a person of a certain age to guess. So my cooking is so bad. My kids thought Thanksgiving was to commemorate Pearl Harbor. That Miriam, I'm going to give you full credit for putting that one in there.
Yeah, I just thought it was hilarious. I guess it speaks to organizational values at some point. Not Bob Hope, but you are
Right
in
era.
the
Joan Rivers, right era.
You're right era there.
Yep. She was an actor, she was an author, she was a musician.
I'm trying to think
I'll just tell you, it's
Yeah,
Phyllis Diller, who was a very, very funny lady. Well, let's move on. Let's talk about the last one, the learning culture. We've kind of dipped our toes in that a little bit. What do we need to know here?
Yeah, so again, this is one of those that Rebecca talked about, kind of I don't want to say feel good area, but we're really getting in a lot of affective goals here. And so, but it's interesting to have teams think about how is learning used in the organization? Like, is it used as punitive? You know, for example, you don't have time, you need to put in your 40, 50, whatever, 60 hours it might be, and then you still have to do this on your own. Is it, you know, almost like punishment, or are we going to give you time because we're interested in your growth and development? What's worked, what hasn't? If they just recently had a really bad experience rolling out some sort of initiative, well, we need to kind of fix that situation first, whether it's the messaging or the motivation. Is learning viewed as individualistic or collaborative? That's a huge question. And a global environment, is this something where Rebecca and I dealt with this years ago, and we have several times since, where global companies, but based in the US, just had their employees sit in front of a computer and complete e-learning. Well, they're very much a collaboristic society. And so that just really almost immediately killed any sense of motivation, any sense of desire. So those are questions to just think through. I guess one other thing, like, you need to think about globally, is this a more competitive society, or again, is this a collaborative society? We often, you know, gaming, gamification, it's a big buzzword. It can be incredibly effective, but it may not be the greatest, the best strategy, depending on your global culture. So it's just something to think about. What is the culture like within your organization? How do people view learning as you're rolling out or thinking through a program?
In addition, we often encounter barriers as well here, where not if it's in a manufacturing area, for example, not everyone has access to a desktop. So how is it going to be rolled out? Those kind of questions and answers are discovered during the learning culture section as well.
Yeah, Gus has a good comment here. Outside of compliance, no training is mandatory at my organization. There's chatter around mandating feedback writing training, which makes it feel punitive or heavy-handed in my view. That's an interesting, I don't know what company you're in, Gus, but it all depends on the company, right? In certain companies, the exact same 12-step process has to be followed every single time, and people have to have a way of learning that. But it's you know, if you can, it's the push versus pull, right? If you have to push people versus people themselves are pulling learning because they know they need it, because it's beneficial, they see the value in it. That's a much healthier kind of culture. David, you asked, will we show an example of a completed curriculum map? Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. So let's just go to the quote here in the interest of time. For me, cooking is an expression of the land where you are and the culture of that place. It's a great quote. Anybody know? It's got a lot of restaurants. Yep. Wolfgang Puck. Yeah, and I forget. I started counting. There's just dozens and dozens of not only his own branded restaurant, but all sorts of one. Janice, my department culture is there's no time to do training due to capacity issues, so I have to design everything in an hour. Yeah, micro learning there, right? Experiential training. That's true. I'm completely guessing, but I'm guessing you might be in a manufacturing environment, which oftentimes throughput, right? You're just trying to create and create and create and create product, and that can be a significant challenge. Okay, let's move on to the last one here.
Yeah, and I think if we want to go ahead and move to the next slide. So this is where this is the deep dive, right? And Rebecca can talk about, we can do this in a spreadsheet. We also use like a Miro board or other, we're not paid by Miro to advertise for them, but here's where the rubber meets the road. That's a very non-global expression, but the concepts here of, I'm going to list the topics that we believe are a part of this program. They may be existing, they may not be. We may be creating them. What are the objectives? What are the existing materials? Are there gaps? Are there redundancies? Rebecca, you've done this so much. Why don't you fill in all your expertise?
This is where, to go back to the dinner party, this is where you're creating your menu, right? This is where you're saying, okay, here's what we're going to have for our appetizer. Here's our topic one. Here's what we need to accomplish. Here's our objectives for this section. Here's what's out there. Here's what we can use from what we have already. Where are those gaps? And we're going to run through each of those topics to ensure that we're going to be able to meet the previous things, those objectives, the learning culture, all that. So it's the menu, it's the recipe. And from this is where you go then into your storyboarding for each of those topics.
Right. And for existing materials, you're literally listing like, oh, we have the employee handbook, this section, these pages, or there was a video we made. So this is very like high level. So we can customize this with more columns, right? Like we have the 2017 video from the CEO that we need to have up. Like we put in columns that basically say like, well, what work is needed? It needs to be updated. It needs to be created, or it's complete. It's good as is. Oh, we have an e-learning course, but the last 2 minutes need to be updated. Like this is where we're putting in the exact content. And that's why we send out pre-work and we ask people to come prepared, because these topics and objectives really help frame up for us then too. Like with existing materials, we often find maybe we have too many existing materials. We don't need them. Sometimes the objectives have to be changed or modified or updated. So this is a very live, real working document and multiple sessions.
And this is the reason you need 2 instructional designers on, because one is leading the questioning, one is organizing it in a way that makes sense to the group. This is also why we recommend shorter durations of time, because this takes a lot of brain power for all involved, the people working it and also the stakeholders and the SMEs.
Yeah, Rhonda, good point. Never skip the objectives.
Never.
That's where your alignment is or it isn't. And that's where most people are not aligned, even though they don't know that they are. I'm going to jump to the last quote here, and it's the one that makes perfect sense to me. I enjoy cooking with wine. Sometimes I even put it in the food. Anybody know who that is? Me. Me.
Right.
Nicely done, Rhonda Julia Childs. Yeah, great movie. If you've not, I can't remember if it's Julie and Julia or Julia and Julie, but it's a wonderful movie of her life and the kind of person that she was. So David, to your point, we will be following up with you, and we'll be providing a form that you can actually use and create. And by the way, if you need help doing this, we are here to help you. We'd love that opportunity. We do a lot of this. And so we if you're struggling with curriculum mapping, we would love to do that. Just one final slide. Let's talk through the value. What's the real, this is sort of the essence of it. What's the real value of a curriculum map?
Yeah, this is just a review, right? I mean, it's easy to get deep in the weeds, and especially as you know, as you start to meet with these people and really work through it. But it's alignment, it's consistency with our learning objectives. So we talked a little bit about ROI, right? So it's creating a baseline of measurement so we know where are we at now, where do we want to go, which often doesn't happen if we don't take the time to do this, and establishing the priorities.
Yeah. Yep. Rebecca, anything to add to that?
No.
Okay. Fair. Yeah, that's one of my favorite parts about you, Rebecca. We'll do a little advertising here. As I mentioned, we have an upcoming webinar on May 21. We'll send you information on this, but why marketing could be your global learning's missing ingredient, and then how to fix it. So, are there anybody have any burning questions? Anything remaining that that we need to discuss? If
And
not, oh, so go ahead.
I was just gonna say, Jerry, like Jerry said, we will be sending out, we don't, it's not a completed form, but it is a form that you will be able to use of a curriculum map that you can fill in and modify. Again, it's a very flexible tool.
Yeah. Gus, I like your comment. I think marketing our offerings is literally 50% of our headaches. And honestly, maybe it's because it is 50% of the headaches. Oftentimes it's ignored.
Mhm.
And that's an opportunity. I shouldn't say that's a mistake. It's an opportunity missed, right? There's a
Mhm.
great opportunity if with a little thinking and a little planning on how to market. Yeah, and how to market these things in a remarkable way. So everybody, we are just incredibly grateful for your time and the opportunity, and for your engagement, which has been
Mhm. It's been
fantastic.
great.
And we wish and we hope that you have a fantastic rest of your morning or your afternoon or your evening, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you for the gift of your time.